and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And today we are going to get to know Councilwoman Snead a little bit better, what her priorities and issues are for the city. Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you, Robin. It's so good to be back.
You know, you talked with us when you were fairly new as a councilwoman. A lot has changed since then.
A lot has changed.
What do you feel like council has accomplished, and what are you personally wanting to work on right now?
Well, Robin, since day one, my top priority has been economic development, and it continues to be economic development. We're at a time in the city where we could really do some great things that could generate revenue. Economic development is the revenue driver for the city. And that money allows us to do some of the things that our citizens want done, such as maintenance of our facilities, new parks, new venues, things that give us a good quality of life. But what we have to do is generate the revenue in order to do that. Unfortunately, when I first got on council, we were in a recession. And that kind of tied our hands, and we had very slow growth. But now we're out of that recession, and the time is right for the city of Hampton.
Well, I want to talk about that a little bit more, because what I see from the citizens, and you know, we do a ton of outreach, a ton of input. People want stuff now. They don't like when we give incentives to businesses to locate. They really were cranky about supporting new hotels because they want citizen services, and they don't see that to fund those citizen services or to buy those facilities takes money. And all they see is the hotel taking money away. What happens on the back end? Explain how this works.
People get that mixed up with the money that we use to operate our budget. And that's really not the case. How we fund those projects is through borrowing. Apps like you would have a home equity line to improve your property. What we do with the city, in the city of Hampton, is we come up with a capital improvement plan. And in that plan includes maintenance as well as new projects. People want to say, take that money and use it for maintaining your parks or doing certain things. Part of that money is used to maintain parks and building facilities. That's the part that our tax base pays for. But then there's another part where you have to enhance the economics in your city. You have to do some things that don't cost you to service in order to have the money, because if you're going to have something that's going to cost you to service, then it's negating any increase that you might have in funding.
So something like the hotel, when we use tax money to help get that going, there is always, I mean, I'm going to call it a P&L, a profit and loss statement, which it's not, but there is a look at how long it will take the city to recoup that money. That's
Absolutely.
not money that's just given away.
No.
That comes back.
We always look to see at what point have we broken even, always. And we have a great economic development authority that helps us with that. We have citizens who are appointed who help us to analyze that. So we just don't do it haphazardly. We really look at the benefit to our city. One of the things that I have always said is that we built a great convention center. We have a wonderful convention center, but then we didn't look at our hotel stock in order to support that. If in fact we can bring up the quality of our rooms, that's going to generate quite a bit of money for us. If you look at Boo Williams, 40% of his patrons end up in Newport News or Norfolk or somewhere else, whereas if we had the quality hotel rooms, they would be here in Hampton, and we would be getting that revenue.
And explain what we get. When someone stays in a hotel, what does the city get for that?
The city gets lodging taxes, we get meal taxes, we get amusement taxes, because people eat out, they go to bowling alleys and movie theaters and concerts.
They might go shopping.
And
Do you
go
go
shopping,
when you're in a
sales
new
tax.
town?
Absolutely. Yes.
So, as budget director, you had to balance every year the amount of revenue we get versus the need for services.
Absolutely, Robin. I spent 15 years as the budget director, but I spent 32 years in the budget office of my 34-year career. So definitely I knew the ins and outs of city operations, how money worked, the fact that you have money that is recurring money versus one-time money. And a lot of times citizens get that mixed up. They will say, well, why don't you use that money that you were going to use to build the courthouse or some other facility for more police officers? Well, it's not the same money. That is considered one-time money. And so one-time money, if you use that for police officers, then you would have a huge gap the following year in the budget
You'd have to
process.
lay them off or
That's
come up
right.
with that same amount of
Raise
money
the
again.
taxes or something.
And we're at the point where, you know, we have a hard time raising taxes because we have a fairly large number of people who are on a fixed income or who are lower income, and there's just not that much tolerance. And, you know, if we have more houses that were worth a little bit more, those people would be paying a lot more in taxes, whereas these people wouldn't have to. And it's coming up with that balance to help bring in more money each year, not one time.
Absolutely, and that's why we have a high value housing strategy, because we do in Hampton have more than our fair share of low income housing, or what people call
Moderate.
affordable,
Yeah.
not low income, but affordable housing. And so we decided to put our strategy into trying to get in more real estate taxes through having higher value housing. And so a lot of times citizens don't understand that aspect of it. But, you know, I tell people all the time, I'm a citizen of Hampton too, and I want what's best for our city, and I certainly would not be up there making a decision that I think would hurt our citizens. I'm trying to look at it from not my personal financial perspective, but from the perspective of all of our citizens and try to do what's best for them.
Well, and I think what citizens sometimes forget is, you know, they want what they want now. And that's really, you know, that's the kind of world we live in right now. We want it now. We figure out how to pay for it later. We'll go into debt.
Right.
Hampton doesn't go into debt.
No. I mean, we
can't, but we're not gonna.
Right. We have our fair share of debt service. But if you really look at what we could borrow versus what we do borrow, we are very much on the conservative side. And our financial rating through the bond rating agencies proved that, you know. So we are like one notch from being the highest.
Right. And we can't operate at a deficit like the federal government.
We must have a balanced budget, and that's a state of Virginia requirement, really. So Hampton does well with the resources that we have every year. We end up, I don't know the last time we've ever had a deficit at the end of the year. We've always had a minor surplus. So I think that the staff that we have, the financial policies that we have in place are there to protect our citizens and protect the city.
And when we look at economic development, there's lots of things. I mean, hotels aren't the best jobs, but there's jobs.
There are jobs.
And everybody needs a first job. People forget about that.
Absolutely.
But also bringing in companies, bringing in employers who are going to pay more than minimum wage. All of those things have been a big focus of yours especially, but all of the council.
Absolutely, because and maybe I think that I don't do a good enough job in letting people understand or helping them to understand that economic development, to pay that incentive, that's just the way that the world is now.
And if we say, no, we're not going to do that, they're not going to come here because somebody else will pay that incentive.
That's right. Absolutely. They will. And so if you look at it, what we're paying in order to get that particular, get that particular company or hotel or whatever, in the grand scheme of things, if you look at it from a long time or period, you'll see that we will more than recoup. People talk about the convention center having a small deficit at the end of the year, but no one talks about all of the revenue that it brings in. When if you took the indirect revenues,
That's it. Mm-hmm.
like sales tax, meals tax, lodging taxes, you would see that small deficit is really made up through the city gaining in that aspect.
And I think people don't understand
No.
that. You know, I've always thought you spend your big money on an investment, things that are going to return money back to you, rather than things that just go away.
Right.
So speaking of returns, there's a human return here too, and it is one of your issues.
Yes, it is, because we have so many challenges in our city with our young people. And you know, I think back to when I was young and how there were programs in place that helped me as a young teenager to see the possibilities. I think that right now poverty is one of the biggest challenges we have in the city, in the country, really.
It is.
It really is.
That growing gap.
Yes. I mean, and that's what's causing a lot of the angst, or, you know, the turmoil between our young people. They don't see a future. They don't see job opportunities. And one of the things that the federal government did was cut back on the resources that would allow us to have those job opportunities for our young children. And if you probably go back to when they started making those cuts, that's when we started seeing a lot of the activity with the youth violence.
Well, you know, I was a benefit of the Federal Comprehensive Employment and Training Act in high school and would not have had a job. I lived in a poor county. We were pretty low income. I would not have had a summer job after, I think it was after my junior year, senior year, and then in college, if it hadn't been for that. There were no jobs in my county. And it helped me pay my share of my college expenses.
Right.
And, you know, that doesn't exist for kids
Doesn't
today.
exist. And I am a product of the CETA program.
I know you are.
As well. And I started off as a secretary.
Because it served young adults as well
yes,
as,
it served young adults as well. And I started off in the city manager's office as a secretary and worked my way up until I ended my career as a budget director. And I certainly do give credit to the CETA program, because it not only taught me about work ethic and placed me in a job, but I got all types of training as well, how to do a resume, how to dress for my job. And then I
drove those kids around and helped them open bank accounts and learn to keep a savings account.
Absolutely. Financial management. I mean, it's so much that it teaches you, and you get to see how people live. I think that's more profound for me, because I got to see people in beautiful, see people in beautiful homes and out going to concerts and doing things. And that was a lifestyle. I was like, wow, I think I want to live like that, you know? And so then you have something to aspire to, and you work hard so that you can get the resources. I always said that I worked so that I could have a good quality of life.
And you do.
And I
It's
do.
fabulous.
I do.
But how do we, as Hampton, with all of our budget challenges, make up that gap?
Well, I think the citizens have to really realize that this is what is needed. And we have to start lobbying at the state and federal levels. We have to lobby the states our state to start funding more of our education. Right now,
Both K-12 and college,
K-12 and college, because
kids come out with so many loans now.
Oh my gosh,
it's
yes.
debilitating.
It is terrible. It shouldn't be that way.
My college loans were 2% interest.
Right.
Not
now,
anymore.
no, not
It's
anymore.
not subsidized.
No. And then now parents are on the hook as well for those student loans, because, you know, sometimes the few that don't pay their loans, you know, then there's a rule in place to make sure that, you know, the money gets recouped. But I forgot what I was saying.
But the student, so Hampton has done some things to certainly youth violence. We've increased the police force. We've got more monitoring. We're putting a lot of police out there, but getting at the cause, poverty, lack of future, lack of, to education, but I think it's more like when people have missed the opportunity,
Right.
how do they get back?
Right.
How do they get back into
Families are in crisis. I mean, they really are. And we have to make sure that we lobby our federal legislators. I mean, we need to come together as a community. It's easy for us to say, well, we need more police officers. You can have as many police officers as ever, but that's not going to stop the crime. It really isn't, because they don't know exactly where the crime or when it's going to happen.
Right.
And so, we as a community have to come together. We have to have neighborhood watches. We have to get to know each other. There was a time when you knew everybody in your neighborhood and you looked out for each other. That doesn't happen now. You can go and live in a neighborhood for 15 years and not know your neighbors, and your children are out there, and there's no one out there. We all looked out for each other when we were growing up.
What changed? How do we fix it?
It's technology, I think, changed it. I honestly do, Robin, think that, because now we're so locked into our phones. We email everyone. We don't get up and build relationships anymore. And I think the key, we are human beings, and we need to interact with each other. And because of television, computers, music, and the like, we don't go outside anymore.
I do think that's changed, where people don't feel safe sometimes going outside. We would play outside after school because there were moms at home.
Right.
Now, both parents are in the workforce a lot of the time. There's less flexibility.
Right. I would tell my daughter, when you go home, you do not go outside, because she was home without an adult there, so, I mean, there are just so many
But we
issues.
can use technology too, because I'll say, through my neighborhood Facebook group, I know more of my neighbors than I meet when I walk my dog at night. And I haven't always met them in person, but we exchange items, we exchange ideas, we talk back and forth. It can help build community. It can't do it by itself.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I still think you need that interaction. I really do, yeah.
Well, so what else would you like to see or focus on?
I think that we do need to focus on maintenance of our facilities. I do. We have some beautiful parks. We have beautiful facilities. But there are times when perhaps we need to give them a lift.
Well, I think it was the thing that went by the wayside during the recession.
Absolutely.
And the growth, the economy has not really picked back up. And so that money hasn't been available. And if I can also say, speaking of our state and federal partners, if the state government was funding its actual share of our K through 12 education, we would, in theory, have more money that could go to maintenance. Or could go
we
to
would
some
have
of those
close
things.
to 34 cents on the tax rate.
Yikes.
34
That's $34 million,
That's
right?
right, absolutely.
That we could do other things with.
That we could do other things with. If the state would pick up its share based on its own formula to fund education.
That is absolutely staggering. And hopefully we would give some of that back to the citizens
We
in
would.
form of a tax break.
Absolutely.
So it's not like the state would raise theirs and we would keep ours,
Right.
but it would equalize things the way they are supposed to be spread out in
Right.
terms of responsibility.
Absolutely, it would.
Okay, Chris, so now I'm going to say, look in a crystal ball, because, one of the things is when you are up there, you don't look at Hampton today. You don't make decisions based on tomorrow. You make 5 years, 10 years, 20-year out decisions. So put on your crystal ball and tell me what Hampton looks like in 10 or 20 years.
I tell people this is my utopia for Hampton. My utopia for Hampton, and actually it'll probably take 20 years to get there, where every neighborhood regardless as to how big, how small the houses are pristine. Everything's painted, lawns manicured, flower beds. I mean, I just think that that's not
Aesthetics matter a lot
It
to you.
matters a lot to me. And I think that that would help a lot with the way that our city would look, you know?
Well, it's also an outward sign that citizens have pride, that citizens have
Absolutely.
jobs, that citizens have enough money and time to take care of things.
Absolutely, I agree. And people look at me when I say that, and I said, I think it's possible. You know, why not dream, you know, for that? That way, regardless as to how small your houses may be, and you know,
And small houses might be the trend.
that may be the trend by then, you know, and to have, I've gone through neighborhoods where I've seen houses where someone has actually taken that house and rehabbed it, and it is beautiful, and it's a little house, and I'm going, my gosh, that looks so great. But people don't realize if you just cut your grass, plant some flowers, put mulch down, that could really improve the look of a neighborhood, and it would want people would want to come and move into that neighborhood.
Well, and people talk about, you know, and in fact, it's one of the knocks on Hampton that our housing stock is old. I live in a house built just post-war, 48, 49, somewhere in there. And it's a great house, but it does take some tender loving care. And I think
does.
when you have those good bones throughout the city, now not all of them are.
Right.
Some of them were kind of slapped up quickly between the war, after the war, and maybe not rehabbable.
Right.
But there's a lot out there that show the character of time and that can be improved, and we can work on rehabbing what we have.
Absolutely, and some of the programs we have, like the Home Blitz, that's a great program.
To take care of people who need that
Yes.
intensive care to bring their
Yes.
house,
Yes.
the exterior of their house and their yard back to condition.
And if neighbors did their own home blitzes, we could really pull up our neighborhoods, you
Right.
know? And so that's one of my passions. 5 years or 10 years from now, I see us having an aquatic center. And I know that a lot of people are not for it, but I think back to the Hampton Coliseum and how there were people who did not think we should have a Hampton Coliseum. But sometimes you have to persevere and do what you think is best for the city. And had we not had the Hampton Coliseum Central wouldn't be the way that it is now.
No,
you
it
know.
really wouldn't.
It
And we
spurred a
wouldn't have
lot.
been able to do the convention center. Those things,
Absolutely.
and that's one of the things I noticed too, is it's that ripple effect. When
Right.
you do one thing, then the next one, then the next one, and you look, Coliseum Central, I've tried to do the math, is somewhere upwards of 80% of our retail sales and our
Absolutely.
retail taxes.
Absolutely.
And where would we be without that? Because
Without that.
Newmarket doesn't exist anymore as a
Absolutely.
retail center.
And all of that was spurred from having the Hampton Coliseum. I think about even with the Boo Williams facility, when we started that, people were against that as well. And look at what's happened, how it has generated so much activity in our city. And so I think about the fact that we need to give things a try. You know, we need to, even the courthouse, which is a public facility, really, people were so against it. But once it was built, everybody now says, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. Look at how beautiful downtown, and look what's happening in downtown.
Well, and you know, most people didn't serve on a jury, but if you ever served on a jury in a criminal case, you would have wanted a new courtroom
Right.
because they're just, you know, it was not built in that era. It was just
Right.
post-Civil War. There were no gangs in those days. You didn't have to keep people separate. And now it's just a huge, huge safety factor.
It is, it is, it
As
is.
well as a statement to the bond people and to businesses who might locate here or
Right.
expand here, that this is who we are.
Right.
We are modern and renovating and vibrant.
Right, and people are
you don't-
visual. They're visual, and so when they see it, I mean, even people who were against it, now say, oh my gosh, it really does enhance downtown. And look at the activity that's happening downtown, where we have the Vanguard. And I can see lots of things beginning to happen, even in that area around the courthouse.
Yes.
But we got activity in downtown Hampton. We are right.
And we are about to have a lot more.
We're about to have a lot more, and I'm so excited about that because it's important to have a vibrant downtown. And I think that we're making the right decisions and trying to get that for Hampton.
Well, thank you, and I hope you stick around for a few more years
Thank
and
you.
make some of those decisions
Thank
and
you.
help lead us into the future.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Robin.
you, Chris. And thank you for watching. I hope you know Councilwoman Snead a little better and understand what she's trying to do. And certainly feel free to reach out to her, email her, contact her if you have things that you want considered. Thanks for watching.